Hello, and welcome back to the show. I'm Don Cody, your host. Today, I'm interviewing a new and fascinating friend, Dr. Gillian Lockitch. Dr. Jill, originally from South Africa, became a medical doctor, but not without many twists and turns on the road to her success. Now a citizen of Canada and retired, at 80 years old, she's still doing great things in the world, and she doesn't plan on slowing down anytime soon. I can't wait for you to meet my new friend, Dr. Gillian Lockitch. Welcome back, everybody. It's Don Cody. I'm your host, and I am here today talking with Dr. Gillian Lockitch. So Dr. Lockitch is a very successful senior, and I'm privileged to have her on the show. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
So, Gillian, if you would please, I want you to talk about what you're doing today and as a very successful senior, how you're helping people. But you've got a very colorful past, and if we'd be here for days telling stories, you'd be telling stories about all the wonderful, amazing things that you've done in your life. But if you could give us a few stepping stones on how you got to what you're doing today, that would be fantastic.
Well, I think the first thing that I would have to emphasize is that my pathway from being, getting my medical degree, getting my specialty, and then becoming a medical specialist, it wasn't as smooth and direct as for everybody. There were so many pivots and twists and turns on the way. And one of the important things that I learned from that was take advantage of things that come your way, even though they may sound totally out of your realm of normalcy, perhaps is the right word for it. So basically, when I finished my medical degree at the University of Cape Town, and my oldest son was born 3 months into my internship, which was a story in itself.
Complication, won't it?
It was number one complication. I had 2 weeks of being able to take so-called maternity leave and had to come back to work when he was 2 weeks old. Anyway, I finished my internship, started my pediatric residency, and then my husband, who worked for IBM at the time, was transferred to Pretoria. So I arrived in Pretoria.
For those of us who are not good with geography, where is Pretoria?
Oh, okay. So I was born in Cape Town in South Africa, and Pretoria is in the northern part of South Africa. So you probably heard of Johannesburg, that area, mainly Afrikaans speaking rather than English speaking. So anyway, off we went, and we landed in Pretoria, and at that stage I had a 2-year-old, and I was 6 months pregnant with my second child, who was born in Pretoria, and no way of continuing my residency training. And so I was sort of at home thinking about, oh my heavens, what could I do? And my husband came home one day. He called on the major research companies to talk about the IBM sort of large computers that they were all using. And he came home and he said he'd encountered. It was in, let me get it right, 1973.
Okay, just to give us a time frame. So computers were the size of rooms back then.
They were huge. And not only the computers, I mean, the storage was, they have all sorts of, refrigeration, etc. Anyway, he came back and he said he'd been talking to the director of the Medical Statistics and Epidemiology branch of the South African Nutrition Research Council. And this doctor happened to say to him, you don't have any spare doctors around that you can introduce me to, because I have this group of very bright young statisticians, and we're investigating a rare disease in Miscellany in Zululand. And all of them are sort of statisticians, and they have no doctor that can interpret any of these results for them. And so Bob said, yes, actually I do. Introduced me to them, and that kicked off a complete pivot in my career where I spent 3 or 4 years, got another doctorate. It's called a Doctor of Medicine. It's sort of the equivalent of a PhD in this rare joint disease. And then the next thing that happened is we came to Canada, drove across the Trans-Canada Highway from Halifax with at that stage, I had a 1-year-old, 3-year-old, and a 5-year-old, and landed in Vancouver, where Bob got a job with IBM. And I then ended up getting a job as a school doctor, working on teams that were looking after kids who were having problems at school. So that was the sort of the first 2 really weird pivots. And then the supervising doctor for the school board said to me, you're wasting your time. Go back and finish your specialty training. So I did that, went back and got my pediatrics. And in the last year, I was doing a fellowship in pediatric neurology, which fascinated me, and also was very hard as a parent, because we didn't have answers for the parents as to, what were the problems that their kids were having. And then the head of pathology and laboratory medicine at the University of British Columbia came to me and said, we want you to be in charge of running the new biochemistry laboratory in the new Children's and Women's Hospital that will be opening in a couple of years. And the only flaw was I had to do a second specialty in medical biochemistry, which was actually the best thing that ever could have happened to me. So I'm probably one of, I don't know how many, probably the only person who has dual specialties in pediatrics and medical biochemistry. And that really set me off on an absolutely amazing medical career that I feel very blessed to have had. And I will say one thing, you talk about success. All this time, and I think many of your listeners will hear this, I never felt I was successful. I always felt, no, I always felt that, that I had to work harder and do more and accomplish more. And it was really only, I would say, probably about 3 or 4 years after I had actually taken early retirement, when I was visited by one of the lovely medical technologists that had worked with me. I won't say for me, we had a big staff. And she said to me, I'll never be able to tell you how much I value what you did as a role model. And that was really the first time that I thought, maybe I had made an impact.
So what do you attribute that
that's why
thinking to, that you didn't feel successful?
I have no idea, but I think it partly relates to imposter syndrome, which so many people have. And then, I was a woman in a field where there were, mainly men. So, for example, I would be sitting at some of the, I was chairing a research committee that was giving out research grants from our telethon. And the other department heads were all around there, and they were all like 6-foot gentlemen who had no problems talking out. Whereas, I tended to listen rather than talk. So it was constantly feeling that I just had to do more to show myself that I was doing a good job and sort of worthy of the trust that the staff and everyone had put into me. And I think if you talk to many successful career women, you'll hear a very similar story. Yeah.
I had worked, I was the vice president for a nationwide bank at one time, and I wasn't seeking a job in banking, but someone recruited me, and he turned out to be one of the founders of the bank. And I was having a conversation with him one day, and he said to me, and I said, when I was leaving, I gave my notice and I was leaving. And I said, I'd really like to stay in touch. You know, you're one of the most successful people I've ever met. And he said, I'm not successful, like very candidly. And I said, Ben, what do you mean? You like founded a bank, for goodness sakes. And he said, no, I'm only worth about 12 million and I need to be worth 100 million to feel successful. I'm like,
That's so
okay. Yeah. So
interesting.
you're right. It's very common among successful people to think it's not
Yeah.
enough.
And yeah, and if looking back and being invited to talk with you, really made me think about success. And I think that I would say that for me, the most important success that I've had in my entire life is the fact that I have 3 children and grandchildren who love me and love each other. And we have a very small but closely knit family. And to me, that is the epitome of
Couldn't agree
success.
more. I couldn't agree more. But here you are, past the age where most people start to think about finding a way to relax and not work so hard. But you're working harder than ever. Can you tell us a little bit about when you decided to take early retirement, what you did then?
Well, I don't think I'm working harder than ever because everything that I do it's a labor of
Okay.
love. So yeah, I kind of feel I'm playing harder than ever, but I'm able to
That.
play at something that gives me joy.
Love that.
So what happened was after my husband had passed away and then my mom died literally 5 days after I'd taken on the job as head of the department um, of pathology and laboratory medicine at Children's. And at that time, when I was recruited, the questions were, what are you going to do to make this amazing department even better? And so, obviously I got the job, and a couple of years into it, there was the whole restructuring that was going on in healthcare. And after a few years of this and an interesting computer acquisition story, which I don't have time to tell you about now, but is fascinating and typical of bureaucracy, I decided that I could better serve everyone if I gave up medicine and basically retired.
That must have been
And
a huge
at that
decision.
well, it was and it wasn't because, okay, so I'm a Gemini, right? So I have the rational science side of me, and then I have the arty, creative, open-minded side of me. And when I was thinking about what to do when I was in my last years of high school, there were 2 options that I had. The one was medicine, and the other one was becoming a journalist. And I figured out that a doctor could always write, but a journalist couldn't practice medicine. And that was one of the reasons that I went into medical
Your options
school right
open.
at the beginning. Yeah, so this time I thought it would be a great opportunity to look at the creative side of my personality. And I had already started a website which was called reviewfromthehouse.com. And I started it to do theater reviews, online theater reviews, because my daughter had come back from New York and Toronto and South Africa with training in theater. She was an all-round, she'd done technical theater and she'd studied acting. And so they formed a small theater company and were putting on these independent plays. And there were a number of companies in Vancouver doing this because it was really hard for new actors to break into the major theater companies. And I was going to all of these productions, and I was seeing, 3 or 4 people in this on stage, and maybe sometimes the only person in the audience was me. And I thought one of the reasons is that they don't have funds to advertise. And so a young friend suggested to me that, why don't you start writing online theater reviews? It's not expensive, and it'll reach a lot of people. And so that was how Review from the House got started. I was writing reviews from the point of view, as I said, the bum in the seat.
I love it.
So the person who's not an expert theater reviewer, but just what do those plays and things mean to me? And anyway, the website grew huge, and I started adding to it by going out for dinner before I went to see plays that I was invited to review. And so I started writing about food and taking food pictures long before everybody was doing that. And so I had a second section of the website, which was all about food and wine, which prompted me to go and do wine education courses. So I did 2 levels of the WSET course. And I didn't do a third one because I would have to identify individual wines. And I was really great at white wines. But when it came to red wines, all I could sort of smell was red wine. So I didn't think I should pursue that. But then when I retired from medicine and I started ballroom dancing, and then I started going on ballroom dance cruises. And so I added dance cruising as the third blog on this review from thehouse.com. And then I was sent all sorts of cookbooks and things to review. So I had a 4th blog. And so I was basically running these 4 blogs. And that was what I was doing for several years while I was going on dance cruises.
And about what age bracket were you at that time?
Well, my husband passed away when I was 61. I retired shortly after that. So I was in my 60s.
Again, most people are thinking about, what can I do to start winding down? You were just getting started.
Yeah, exactly. Too much to do. Yeah. The other interesting thing that I did, I'd always felt that as a doctor at Cape Town, we didn't have an undergraduate program where we could study the liberal arts. And I always felt I'd been trained rather than educated. And so during the time, shortly after Bob passed away, I needed to keep busy. I didn't do a good job of dealing with my grief and mourning. So I enrolled in an online directed study course at the University of British Columbia. The initial one was on Shakespeare. And then I decided that I would get a BA degree. So at the same time as I was acting a university department head, I was also finishing courses for my bachelor's degree in English. And it was quite funny because I would sort of be sitting in my office, talking, thinking about people's promotions and counseling them and doing all of that. And then it would be sort of like 1 o'clock, and I would put on my student hat, run across campus, and have these wonderful afternoon sessions on one of the courses that I did was British literature. I did one on Irish films, Greek and Roman literature and philosophy, all of which were things that I'd been passionate about for years, never had the chance to pursue.
Well,
yeah. And actually that ended really
motivated, right?
Yeah, I have a funny story about that. I don't know if I'm talking too much. But yeah, so shortly before I was due to graduate, which I believe was in 2005 or 2006, 2005 probably, I got a call on my answering machine to call the dean's office. And my immediate response was, oh my gosh, they've discovered I'm missing something. They're not going to let me get my degree. And I was quite devastated. So I phoned the dean, and they wanted me to give the valedictorian speech for my class. And my immediate response was, no, I'm not going to do that. There are so many young people that, would really, really be proud to do this. I don't want to do that. And the dean basically said, you have to. That's it.
Okay, I'm the boss.
Yeah. So it was really interesting because it was the day before, either the day before or the day after, my daughter was getting her master's degree in theater and English. And I gave this speech, and it was basically what I said was, we've made amazing advances in science and medicine, but it's not that makes us human and what we are. It's understanding and loving the joys of all the arts things that, that really adds color and
Yep.
and joy to our heart. And it was very well received. And then the next day I sat on stage and, in my medical sort of robes, and watched my daughter get her master's degree.
Wow.
So it was an amazing
So
experience.
higher education definitely runs in the family.
Yep. My oldest son, his degree was in commerce, and he worked for a long time as an investment banker in New York for the longest time, and then went through, the series of being recruited from one to the other. And then when everything sort of crashed, the layoffs, and he decided that there were better things that he could do with his life. My middle son got a theoretical physics degree. He was in Wisconsin. I still don't quite understand what it is. All I know is that what his thesis was about has finally been demonstrated, something to do with gravity and some kind of waves. I have a copy of his thesis, and the only parts that I could understand was when he said thanks to his parents for their help.
Well, here's what I find fascinating. It's 2025 and we still don't understand how gravity works. You can put people on the moon, but we can't figure out gravity. It's crazy.
Yeah, you know what I have right here, and I don't know if you can see it, but this is a copy of my doctoral thesis.
Oh my goodness. A lot.
Yeah, that I did in Zululand, which was a totally unique experience. I really need to find the time to kind of write up the crazy stories that I have from my adventurous
You do
life.
have a book. It's a very specific topic. I'll ask you to talk about it a little bit, but I'm telling you, if you took the time to write all of the stories, twists and turns on the windy road to success after success after success, I think that would be a bestseller for sure.
Well, in a way, my book, which I can hold up here, I don't know, it's probably coming up in reversed. Right? It's called Growing Older, Living Younger. Oh, and I have a question about the title. The Science of Aging Gracefully and the Art of Retiring Comfortably. And I read that you don't like the term aging gracefully.
Yes, because everybody wants people to, it seems like a lot of very people that are really trying hard to help seniors are making recommendations like slowing down, which you're the absolute opposite of, right? Slow down, don't take any risks. And I think that this is the crescendo. I think that when you reach your golden years, you should plan for them to be the best years. You should be the healthiest you ever were, most fit, the most happy, have the most joy, make the most money, all of which you're doing. And it seems like everybody that's trying to give advice to seniors is telling them to do just the opposite. And it makes me sad because I think that with all the wisdom that we've accomplished in 40 or 50 or 60 or 70 years, we should be doing something with that.
Well, so Don, it gets back to definitions. How you define aging gracefully, because how I define aging gracefully is being able to lead an active, vibrant, motivated life until you just kind of drop.
I love that definition. I'm stealing that. I'm stealing that from you. I will give you credit for it, though.
I can phrase it probably better
No, that
than
was
that.
that
In
was
fact, I
perfect.
have.
That
But
was perfect. And if that were the definition of, if that were what all of the great organizations and people out there that are trying to help, and I feel genuinely really trying to help seniors, if they were doing what you just described, I'd be the biggest fan ever. But they're not, sadly.
yeah. That's really an interesting point because, I've done a couple of interviews and I read a lot about people who are fighting ageism. And the way they seem to be fighting it is by getting people to change their attitude. And I don't think that's the way to do it. I think the way to do it is to prove that age is just a number and you shouldn't be considering people in terms of their chronological age or even what you see as much as how they behave or what they do, and just look at the vitality in their
Mhm.
eyes, that sort of thing.
Which is
So
exactly why
that's another
which
hot
is
topic.
exactly why you're here, Gillian, because you're a living, breathing, shining example of what's possible in someone's 60s, 70s, and even 80s now. And that's what I'm trying to showcase. That's what I'm trying to show the example of what's possible. Don't waste those golden years being cautious and holding back. Just go out and live as fully as you possibly can, and you're doing that. And I'm so excited that you're here with me today in this interview. Would you please tell us a little bit more about the book? What is the main sort of advice that you're giving?
Well, first of all, the title is a little bit of a misnomer, if that's
Mhm.
the correct word to use, in that it talks about the science of aging gracefully. So when I set out to write the book, I wanted to write about all the new epigenetic and the scientific discoveries around how we age. And honestly, about 2 or 3 years into that, I had literally hundreds of pages of science and annotated references and that. And I thought, I wouldn't want to read this. And I don't know that anyone else would. And so that was when my very wise daughter, listening to me moan and groan about, I'm not going to do this, blah, 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 said to me, Mom, why don't you just tell your story and the science will be woven into that? And that's exactly what happened. So the book is partly a memoir, and partly little bits of science, but it's not stuff that's being shoved down people's
Mhm.
throats as, take this, take that, do this, do that. So it ended up being a story of what happened to me after I had my spinal sciatica episode and emergency spinal surgery, and then found myself in a situation where I was 40 pounds overweight. I was depressed. I didn't want to see anyone. And I'd had to give up my dancing. And I really needed to find a way to rehabilitate myself so that I could get back on the dance floor 10 months after my emergency spinal surgery. And so during that process of rehabilitation, I came to the conclusion that there were sort of 7 areas that people had to consider when they were talking about defining their personal roadmap for aging well or growing older but living younger. And so the book is written in chapters that center around each of these 7 pillars, but it's written about my story and the pitfalls, what I learned that I did right and what I learned that I did wrong. And it sort of concludes with, this is my roadmap. Everybody else has got their own. And, my joy is to help people discover for themselves what they can do. And it's not the it you know, for example, I'm not talking about the magic elixir of, healthy aging or increasing telomere length or doing anything like that. It's simple, practical lifestyle things that every one of us can do if we have the mental commitment to do
It
this
sounds
well.
like it's a bit philosophy and a bit actionable advice. Yes.
Yeah, not as much philosophy because, well, I guess it is in some ways, like my philosophy about
Mhm.
nutrition and my philosophy about mindset and all of that. But I really consider it more, as I said, a memoir, a
Mhm.
story that people can see and judge for themselves, what I did wrong and what I did right, and whether it's applicable to themselves. And most of the feedback that I get from people is that it was very readable. Several people said they picked it up and sort of read it in a couple of hours, which is the kind of book
Me
I
too.
like. um, yeah, and, as I said, it's mainly
What I love
stories.
about that is my dad gave me a lot of what I call nuggets of wisdom. He never finished seventh grade, but he was the smartest guy ever that I met. Right. But here's one of the ones that he said to me. He said, "Son, you don't learn anything by your successes because you already knew that shit." Is what he. My dad was a little
Right.
crass, but he said you learn from your mistakes because you didn't know that
Mm.
stuff. And if you take what you learned from your mistakes, then you'll be able to be more successful. Right. So when you put stories in there about here's what I did right, but here's what I didn't do right, that's so
Mm.
valuable. And it is very relatable because nobody's successful all the time. And we only learn from our failures, not our successes, because we already knew that stuff.
One of the commonest things that people say to me is that about um, they're concerned about their mind and their memory and small things that they do wrong. And so one of the chapters that I have in there is called um, here's my memory thing. It's called mindset, mindfulness, and mind keep. You see, I did remember mindset, is all about attitude and
Mhm.
beliefs. And mindfulness is about becoming present, something that I'm learning a lot more about in the last 6 months or so, since I've opened myself up to things like thinking about frequency healing and quantum health. And then mind keep is all the ways that you can actually keep your mind active. So I'm a cryptic crossword puzzle
Wow.
addict. And yeah, and then I do a couple of online computer brain training
Mhm.
games every day. So that's sort of just an example of one of the things, and it all starts out with a story. I believe that one started out with the day I found my new contact lenses in the freezer next to the frozen shrimp.
Okay. Who might have done that? Well, I would love for you to tell us because I feel like we could talk for hours and hours, but we're obviously limited on time. I'd love for you to tell us about what you're doing to help people today because I find it fascinating. You've got a great company that you represent and some really unique products. And I'll ask you a specific question. Please don't let me forget about that company that I happen to know about, and I
Mhm.
want to make sure that I have the information accurate because when I heard about that, it just blew me away. But please tell us about your business.
Okay, so when I brought the book out and started the podcast, for me, the next step in helping people implement this was to create some online group coaching programs. And so I put in place this program, which was called the Change Your Aging Master Plan, which was designed to run over a year cycle with 3 months devoted to mind and brain, 3 months devoted to body and 3 months devoted to environment and internal and external environment and sort of self-development. And so I ran one of these programs, and a couple of things happened. First of all, I didn't get the people signing up, the numbers that I wanted. And then people who actually sign up didn't necessarily always turn up. I thought this isn't a very practical way for me, and I didn't really want to spend much effort in that. So I thought, how can I incorporate all the lifestyle, simple things that people can do into a way that's easily transmitted? And you have to remember that I am retired, and so nothing that I do or say can be construed as either treating, prescribing, or diagnosing medical conditions. However, when I do a one-on-one talk with somebody, the way in which I go about it is very similar to what I would have done if I was meeting with a patient for the first time. And so I figured out very quickly that the best way that I could help people was getting advice from other experts, which is through my podcast. And so I'm continuing to do that. We'll talk a little bit maybe about that in a minute, which is now up to 4 years and episode, I believe the last one was 224. Wonderful speakers. But I had started at the age of 70. I became a first-time entrepreneur when I joined New Skin, and there's a funny story about that as well. And so when I meet a new person and I'm talking to them about New Skin, I'm essentially doing my whole lifestyle question and answer, because I've always believed that the patient tells you the answer. And in this way, if you use your 2 ears rather than your one mouth, you'll learn from the person that you're talking to what are their fears, what are their greatest aspirations, and therefore what you can do to help. So I really incorporated my coaching in a way into my New Skin program.
So why New Skin? There's many companies out there, many great companies out there. Why New Skin?
Well, there's actually quite a cute story about that. So while I was actively working on my reviewfromthehouse.com website, I got invited to all sorts of reviews. And one of the things that I was invited to was a wellness show, one of these trade shows. And I was wandering the aisles, basically, antennas sort of flapping all over the show, looking for something that I thought, from a scientific basis, was not snake oil, right? And I came across this booth which said a scientific approach to anti-aging. And so I kind of a little belligerently went up to this lovely, smiling, blonde lady and said to her, "What do you mean by a scientific approach to anti-aging?" And she pulled out something that was called a heat map, which is basically a way of assessing the effect of something on gene expression. And I thought, oh, yeah, maybe this is something real. And, you can't really have a good discussion in these trade shows. So I invited her to contact me and to come around to my home in a couple of weeks for a visit. And she arrived with another wonderful, feisty Italian-born or Italian-Canadian who has since become one of my closest and upline friends. And the first thing they did was do a scan to see how good my antioxidant protection was. It was pretty good because I've always believed in taking supplements. But the next thing, they started talking about anti-aging. And I said to them, well, this is a week before my 70th birthday. My kids are throwing a party for me. Actually, sorry, it was a month before my birthday. And the kids are throwing a party for me. And, if you guys are so good at anti-aging, what can I do to look 20 years younger at this party? And they sort of laughed and they said they can't guarantee 20 years. But what
Set
they
the bar
do
pretty
have is
high
this
there.
thing. Yeah, exactly. But what they do have is this thing that they call a wrinkle iron, which turned out to be the galvanic spa, which is a handheld device, multiple awards for it, but it basically is 2 5-minute treatments a week. And it helps with smoothness and all sorts of other things. Anyway, so I thought, what have I got to lose? So I said, okay, sign me up as a member. And I bought this galvanic spa. And I used it. It was 4 weeks, so I used it 8 times. And then came my birthday, and people were saying to me, Jill, what are you doing? We know you wouldn't use injectables and Botox. What are you doing? You look so much younger. And I said, well, I have this wrinkle iron. And several people said, well, how do we get one of those? So a little light bulb went on in my head. And then the next morning, my kids were all visiting from out of town. And so I had a brunch for the family, including my brother, who was visiting from Calgary. And I said to my oldest son, the investment banker, Mikey, go and check out this company, Nu Skin, and tell me what you think about it. And he sort of came back and he said, look, it's a publicly traded company. They've been in business at that time, I think it was 30-something years. Everything looks really good. They seem to be philosophically inclined to service, and their products seem to be amazing. Go for it. Why don't you try this? And so I decided I would sign up as an affiliate at that time. And my kids said they would sign up and under me, and my brother said he would also join at the time, although he didn't pursue it later. But so what happened was I had to call Nu Skin to change from being just a client or member to being an affiliate. And so I was on the phone to Nu Skin, and they gave them my social insurance number, which you have to do because it's a business. And they said to me, you already have an ID with us. And I said, what do you mean? And they read out one of these early Canadian IDs. And I said, I don't know where that would come from. And then I remembered that, gosh, it's had to be many years earlier. My husband had come home with this box of products and said to me, this is going to be incredible. We need to do it. And I remember saying to him, are you crazy? I'm not interested in makeup and all of that. I'm a doctor. I'm not going to do it. But we had the ID number. And I wonder whether if I'd done that and dropped out of medicine at the time, I would be, better off than I am now.
Well, it's unlikely you would have such an array of stories to tell.
That's true.
So you're an affiliate now, and you use your coaching style and your medical background to be able to help people see the value in those products. And you've been doing that for how long?
Since my 70th birthday, just turned 80,
wow,
so 10 years.
Fantastic. So here's my question. I mentioned to you before we came on air that a dear friend of mine was one of the first distributors for Nu Skin, and he had told me at lunch one day a number of years ago that Nu Skin bought the rights to the genome. Is that true?
Okay. Well, it's a little more complicated than that. So if I can take just a few minutes.
He probably knew
Pardon?
I couldn't handle more complicated.
Well, it's actually a fascinating story, and it's actually one that I tell a lot because for people to understand the uniqueness of our ageLOC brand. So I believe it was in 2009, there was an article in Science talking about a rhesus monkey study out of Wisconsin that showed if you severely restricted calories while making sure that the essential nutrients are present, this led to longevity and a significantly diminished number of what we call the aging disorders. And since, some of the scientists who were involved in that study realized that, that's all very well. And we know that caloric restriction enhances longevity throughout the genome of, everything from a sort of a single cell to complicated people like us now. And as a result of that, they set out to find out what were the genes that were involved in enhancing longevity and really diminishing many of these so-called age-associated disorders. And they formed a company. This company was then acquired by Nu Skin, and with the two scientists sort of, I believe, are on the research board. And what they have is this huge database of genes that are positively affected and negatively affected, I presume, by caloric restriction, and that are enhanced that can be enhanced by certain products that are created using what they call a patented ageLOC technology. And so when I started reading I'd read the Science study way back, and when I started reading about the kind of things they were doing and seeing the heat map that was produced in an article about one of the earliest, I probably shouldn't use this word, but I'm going to anyway. I call it a nutrigenomic product as opposed to just a nutritional product. And this is a product that has two parts. The day version stimulates mitochondrial production and quality and function, and the night product stimulates a process called autophagy, which you're familiar with it, I'm sure, but I'm not sure if all your audience are. But the simpler way to talk about it is nighttime cellular detoxification, clearing out all the debris from our 24-hour-a-day metabolism that's going on in our cells. And so as soon as I started reading about that, that got me really looking at the whole quality of the Nu Skin Pharmanex brand. And I was so impressed that I'm basically a product of this, the nutritional supplements, the nutrigenomic supplements, and their skincare. So then they brought out a number of probably the most exciting device that came out after the wrinkle iron, which I still use to this day twice a week.
And it shows.
It's called... Oh, thank you. That's another thing. I've learned to smile and say thank you instead of blush and get all embarrassed at compliments. So that's a big growth thing to happen at 80.
For sure.
So yeah, so they have this other device it's called the LumiSpa, and it's IO. It's connected to an app that you have on your phone, and it is a treatment cleanser device that you use 2 minutes, and you can use it in the shower in the morning. And again, the magic are the ageLOC cleansers that you use with it. So, and it's also connected to some of our collagen products. So people who use this collagen, specific collagen product, and the LumiSpa with the cleansers, it really enhances the collagen and elastin. So it sort of causes a smoothness of the skin. Your skin looks well hydrated,
Radiant.
glowing,
Yes.
all of that kind of thing. Radiant, yeah. Vibrant and radiant are the words that I use for aging gracefully.
I love it. And that makes perfect sense to me. Hey, I hope you're enjoying the show. I wanted to take a moment for a public service announcement. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the Successful Seniors newsletter. It comes out every Wednesday morning, takes about 5 to 7 minutes to read. It'll be in your inbox for you to read with your first cup of coffee. It'll be the highlight of your week, and I know you're going to love it so much you're going to want to share it with all your friends. So go to successfulseniorsmedia.com to subscribe. There'll be a link in the show notes, successfulseniorsmedia.com to subscribe. And now back to the show. So,
Okay.
so Gillian, before the break, you were talking about, and I love the way you talk about the products, because so few people in that business have the medical background and the science background that you have. So how can someone work with you and be able to, maybe they want to build a business, maybe they just want the products, but how can people get to you and learn more about what you do and how they can be a part of that?
Well, there's two things to consider. First of all, being in contact with me, the simplest way is just to drop me an email and at askdrjill, Gill, at gmail.com. The second is to set up a complimentary call with me, and I have a Calendly link that they can use for that. And the third way is they might want to check out the website, which is called askdrjill.com. And wow, I mean, or you can reach out to me on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, all these sort of places. Yeah. So that's the best way to get hold of me. Now, your question is a very interesting one, because a lot of people say to me, oh, you're a doctor, you understand all the science. How can I talk to people about many of these products? And that's another reason why Nu Skin is my absolutely favorite company. And that is for almost every one of the products, they have the most detailed PDF customer information pages that I've seen. And, I get recruited to join a lot of companies, so I do a lot of checking out these things. And in most of them, there will be a PDF, or you can access it on the website, that will basically talk about what the product is, what the science or rationale behind it is, how it's used, what is in it, where it's relevant, what studies have been done around it. And so nobody really needs to be an expert. They just need to be passionate about the benefits that it can bring if they're appropriate for their particular client that they're talking to.
I see. And so you obviously are talking from experience with 10 years in the business, and you I'm sure have a worldwide organization at this point. So if it occurs to me that a lot of people that have had the level of success that you've had in a network marketing company or direct marketing company might not be available. So ladies and gentlemen, if you have any interest at all in anti-aging and helping people with anti-aging, Dr. Gillian is available. That is amazing.
Okay, I want to just have one caveat to that. And yeah, so yes, I've been involved for 10 years. I love it, but I have never got to the top echelons of an affiliate, and largely because I really haven't spent the time doing anything. But I think people do need to understand that it's called network marketing. So it's not sign up and money is going to sort of come into your pocket or clients, you actually have to make the effort to talk
The
to
network.
people, to find out what their needs, to network.
Right.
Yeah. And so I really don't want to give the impression that I'm, one of these pink Cadillac.
That's
Well, that's a different
that's
company, right?
the other company.
Yes.
Well, one of the things that fascinated me when I met John McClellan, again, one of the original distributors, is how many men were involved. It is,
Mhm.
skin products are typically associated with, women, and yet so many men were involved. And I didn't understand it until John explained to me that it's because of the science. And men, like you said, in the male dominated world of the medical business, the medical field and the science field, those are male dominated industries. And when they saw the science, and again, folks, the reason why I'm mentioning is there's so many products out there that don't have the science to back them up, and New Skin does. And so I think that, Gillian, you
Mm.
picked a great company to be able to represent.
I think, yeah, I think with respect to men, it's more than just. I mean, men can use the Lumi Spa and get the
Right.
same wonderful results, get rid of the wrinkles, all of that kind of thing. Or the galvanic spa. I'm not sure how many use it now, but and the other thing is, I think most of the greats that you think about as business people talk about network marketing as the absolute, with the correct company, as the best way of running a business. And if you think about New Skin, it doesn't cost you anything to become a member. All you're paying is the amount of time that you want to put in to
Yes.
build a business. So there's no big startup costs. There's no initially. There's no what's the word, requirements to stay a member or an affiliate. You don't have to purchase anything. The company does everything for you, actually, provided you sign up a client, they put an order in. You don't have to take credit cards. It's done on their own individual website, and the company ships it directly to whatever address they want, to their home, etc. Um, all you have to do is check in and say, are you enjoying the product? And I mean, I don't know any kind of business that functions that efficiently. So I think network marketing has been given a really bad rap because there have been many, many bad companies and bad players. But I think if you seek out something, a company that, is, first of all, if it's publicly traded, there can't be any financial
Right.
shenanigans. And if you find that their ideals and their principles are aligned with yours, for example, being a good steward of the planet by being really careful with things like the packaging and all of that type of thing, sustainability of the products, service. One of the big things that they do is they have created unique forms of meals. And I can't remember what the last number was, but they're distributed to kids around the world who would not normally be getting a
Mm,
square meal. So it's little
yeah.
things like that. Yeah, the mission of service and making the world a better place. And my whole thing is I can't change what a lot of people are doing, but all I can do is try and make my little circle a better place, and then hope that the ripples sort of, I say, if there are enough people creating ripples, eventually it becomes a
There you go.
tsunami.
So one of the things I love best about this is that it hits a lot of what I call the PALs. And so PAL is an acronym I came up with for primary areas of life, right? health and fitness is a primary area of life. You could have all the money in the world, friends, but if you're on life support, none of it matters really. So
Right.
you're handling that with the Nu Skin business. Relationships and friendships and communication and all that sort of thing. You've got to learn how to be a better and better communicator when you're in a business where it requires you to network and meet people and talk to them and persuade them that they should want to be healthier and more fit. And so many people got slammed in 2008 with the big financial crash. They may have done everything right with their retirement, but their 401k became a 101k, which is what we call it down here in the States. And so they maybe even scratched their way back. And then in 2014, we had another huge shift in wealth in the world. And those people, a lot of them are living on Social Security, which is our form. You have a different name for it, but government support, and they're working down at the Walmart as a greeter. So being involved in a business that has no startup costs and all it takes is your willingness to be able to help others is just amazing. To be able to add a few hundred, maybe a few $1,000s. Imagine someone adding $2,000 a month to their income, which is easily doable in the Nu Skin business. And now they can take those trips that they never thought, they always talked about, they could never afford to do. They can go to dinner with their friends. They can maybe drive a better car that doesn't need as much service. And there's just so much that you can unpack from the kind of business that you're in, not the least of which is health and fitness and nutrition and antioxidants and helping people to look better, feel better, and have more energy. So,
there's one point, sorry to interrupt, there's one point that that I would like to make. And I think one of the biggest benefits and successes for me has been my upline. I'm really blessed with 3 wonderful people who have become friends, almost family, I would say. So when I've had the need for somebody to help me do things like move or retrieve something that my little grandson had thrown out of our 10th floor window, certain, either one or other of my upliners sort of come around to my house to help me move things, or with longer arms than I've got to reach out of the window to get the thing back from the ledge. And I'm everlastingly, my gratitude to them and to their immediate upline, who's a wonderful lady in Ottawa, who is, I believe, one of the first team elites in Canada, who joined around the same time as I should have. So that's been another blessing. And that's something else that I consider a success in my
that's
life.
the relationship things. As I get older, stuff means less and relationships mean more. And when you can step into a business that you immediately have partners that are incentivized to help you to be successful, how bad can that be? That's really great. So we've run out of time. Gillian, thank you so much for taking your valuable time. By the way, folks, if you didn't write down all the ways to get in touch with her, they'll be in the show notes. So you'll be able to reach out to her, maybe just click a link I'll put in there and you can get to her. But you've got so many great stories. I'd love to invite you back and you can tell some of the stories you didn't tell today. Would you do that?
Oh, I would love to.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Hold on for me for a minute. We'll say goodbye to everybody. Bye, everybody. Thanks for tuning in this week, and we'll see you next week.